Time now for this week's Health Matters. Paul Critz along with PA Lynn Szabo in the Fug House. And I guess this is topical, a topical topic.
Yeah, that's what I'd hoped, actually. Heat-related disease.
Now, let's get the bragging over with.
Yeah.
It's not topical for us so much.
Well, it is. So we're affected by it, but not in our own personal body space. We're just affected by a number of people in the community.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
Who annoy us because we have to wait in line at Safeway.
Drive across town. So, yes,
right.
The heat.
Right. So, the best way I thought of to look at this is heat-related disease is actually a continuum. And it starts with lack of heat, right? Super cold, so hypothermia.
Okay.
I'm not really speaking to that today, but it is a continuum. And then the next thing is there's a certain amount of comfort zone, and then there's heat exhaustion, which is the less serious counterpart to heat stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of interesting. They got some new ideas about this too that tie in the microbiome. But super common, of course, with high temperatures, but also high humidity, physical activity, and something they call a heat index, which is pretty much kind of
It's the opposite of wind chill.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how the humidity plays in there.
Uh-huh. So are we essentially just talking of a loss of water? Then is the underlying? No.
It's actually the person's body becomes overheated. So it's more like a car with not a radiator loss of water, but the radiator has enough water, but somehow it's not circulating right, and it can't blow off the heat. Okay. So the body gets to the point where it can't cool itself down. So I lived through this recently in my trip to Mexico. I'm a little, I don't know, ashamed to admit it.
Why?
But because I was there as a medical chaperone. Okay, I'm taking care of all these kids, and the first health dilemma we had was me going down. But so what happened was we were in Puerto Morales. It was a huge heat wave, so temperatures in the low 100s. Humidity there is about 85 to 90%.
Because you're in Yucatan, you're in a tropical setting, right?
Yeah, exactly. During an unusually hot period of time.
Ow.
And then I was walking on like a town plaza and just kind of walking the street around. And if anybody's ever been there, everything's made out of limestone, and so it's bright white and it's reflecting light. And I'm a child of the bog, so I'm just kind of picked up one day from San Francisco in that kind of environment, and then put down in this oven.
Oh man.
Okay, so I'm walking around, looking for something to eat, or doing the tourist thing, and then I was feeling slowly worse. Okay, and then I started to see blue spots, and I thought, I am going to faint.
Blue spots. Okay.
Blue spots, not black spots.
Okay.
And then I thought I should sit down, so I did. Mm-hmm. But by the time somebody discovered me, because I just sat down on the sidewalk, I couldn't get up again. So, and I will say that the people around, like there's a taxi driver involved and some shopkeepers, and of course the woman I was, the teacher of the school that I was there with, came to my aid eventually, maybe after 5 or 10 minutes. And I wasn't passed out. I was trying to get up, but the blue spots.
So what did you feel? Just subjectively, what was the feeling?
Well, there's two things, actually. Healthcare providers, when something goes off the tracks in their bodies, they have this really intellectual response to it.
Right.
Oh, this is what's happening. And I'll bet you. And, so I was kind of thinking it out on a really intellectual level, but my brain, the bigger part of my brain was going, will you just shut up and, try and solve this problem? So anyway, I got up and with help, the taxi driver asked me if I was drunk, so I probably appeared to be pretty out of it.
Sure.
And then, of course, his taxi was right there. They're all air conditioned. They plop me in the taxi and hands me a cold bottle of water. And we drove about 2 blocks back to where we were staying, so I could kind of essentially chill out.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right.
Yeah, I don't think this is the first time they have seen that.
No, sure.
I think there's a lot of tourists that, kind of biff it there.
How long did it take you to recover?
Minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously I was sweating. I felt faint, definitely dizzy, weak, rapid pulse. But I think that might have been part of my problem is I take beta blockers, which are blood pressure medicine, and it puts a ceiling on my pulse. So my pulse can't get very high. And also take antihistamines, which is another risk factor for getting overheated.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
They talk about other symptoms of this, which I didn't have, but nausea, headache, and muscle cramps. My whole experience probably lasted 10 to 15 minutes. It wasn't a huge big deal.
Did you feel taxed like after like the rest of the day, or was it just...
but not only because, it was in an ongoing heated environment.
Because it continued to be hot, right? Yeah.
Right. So I got tanked up, and it was really weird because I just eaten and I just drank a bunch of water. But if you've ever been in a situation like that, you can't wipe away sweat on your body.
Not in a humid setting.
You always have this little layer of drippy stuff on your skin.
Yeah.
And that's what was going on. So I had some risk factors too. So risk factors are the age extremes, so old people, young people. Some drugs, like I mentioned, some blood pressure medication and also antihistamines. Obesity, and then sudden temperature changes, which is a risk factor that I had that I hadn't thought about before going there.
Sudden, define sudden.
Well,
like walking out of a room?
Going to sleep one night on a plane, leaving
and then coming out
San Francisco, and then walking into essentially a wet oven.
Right.
So no acclimatization. So you can avoid that by being acclimatized if you know you're going into that environment.
Do you have any sort of guideline as to how long the acclimatization project or process takes?
I did acclimatize, and so did the kids after this happened to me. And I said, I thought after about 3 days I was more physically heat tolerant.
Okay.
And then, but still whiny about it.
Yeah.
Because it was miserable. And then, of course,
but I imagine that varies with each individual, sure.
Right. And of course, if you're going somewhere that's dry heat, I mean, I think most adults have experienced dry heat is not as problematic as a place where there's a high heat index.
Just because dry heat, your sweat will evaporate before you even know you're sweating.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's super frustrating because if you take a shower to feel better, it doesn't. I mean, you can never really dry off.
In the humid setting,
yeah,
right?
There's no evaporation of sweat on your skin, so you don't really have that. So
you're just gonna have to stay in the pool all day.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's
You could. Why not? So what I thought actually there they have cenotes.
What's a cenote?
A cenote is like a sinkhole. Where the surface limestone collapses and you're actually in the underground aquifer.
Oh, wow.
I know,
that's kind of cool.
Super cool.
Do they have like mineral baths and things there too? With all the limestone? And I imagine there are other things around.
Maybe. I didn't see any.
Okay.
But the cenotes are big and they're a tourist draw. And of course, they're huge. They're maybe as big as a city block.
Right.
And there's zip lines into them, and the kids loved them.
Oh, that's so
They're
wonderful.
Super fun. So here's what I thought I was doing correctly, though. I was wearing light, loose clothing. Okay. I was definitely increasing fluids because I just got out of a lunch situation where I was pounding down water. I was taking it easy. I was just strolling down the street. I didn't think that was a big deal. They also recommend protecting against sunburn, which I tend to chronically not pay attention to, although I should. But I have kind of not a tendency to burn. I'm olive complected, I guess.
Yeah.
But what I didn't understand was the need to acclimatize, and then that my meds were a risk. So if you move on to more serious forms of heat problems, and especially heat stroke, that kills about 600 people in the United States yearly.
Before we move on, so would you characterize yours as heat exhaustion then?
Yeah, heat exhaustion.
Is heat prostration still a thing? Or is that just an old-fashioned term for heat exhaustion?
I think that's an old term.
The vapors?
The vapors,
Yeah,
maybe.
okay, cool.
I don't know why they call it stroke, though, because it's not a strokey thing, you know?
Right. Maybe just because you're struck by it. Maybe it's like that or something.
I don't know.
Oh, well, okay.
I didn't name it. I'm surprised it's not named after some old doctor. But heat stroke is more serious, and it kills about 600 people in the U.S. yearly, and that number is actually going up.
Yeah, I bet.
And I got a feeling it's going to continue to go up with climate crisis and also recent changes in laws governing work breaks and things like that. But here's the thing that kind of freaked me out this morning. There's a 65% mortality with heat stroke, even with treatment.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what kills you?
Or organ failure.
Okay.
So, but the symptoms are your body temp's over 104. So that's pretty high.
That's really
higher
high.
than average fever. Altered mental status. So you're not making good decisions about how you need to take care of yourself. You stop sweating.
Whoa.
Your body just doesn't have it together enough to sweat anymore, even though and with a high heat index, it's kind of pointless. It's not apparently down to zero pointless. So you get nauseous and vomiting, all right? So taking extra fluids in is kind of curtailed. And you have flushing, so your blood goes to the surface and kind of makes your skin, the little capillaries at the surface of the skin vasodilate. And so people look flushed.
Is that because you're trying to cool your blood? Is that what you're doing?
No, I don't
think
it is. I don't think it is. So I'll get to that. Increased respiration rate and heart rate. And I think you're having some metabolic changes. And I don't know whether that's acidosis or alkalosis, but trying to correct with a rapid respiratory rate. And then your heart is trying to pump blood around. So I think that's what happens. So there's a new hypothesis that the microbiome in your gut, so that can be good bacteria, bad bacteria. What happens is the intestine surface gets hyperpermeable. So it allows things to cross over from the inside of your intestines into your bloodstream that shouldn't be there. And one of those things is the bacteria producing what they call endotoxins. And this I found actually like, whoa. And so what that's causing, the endotoxins or the poisons are dumping into your bloodstream, and it's kind of like a septic shock thing. So you lose your ability to pump blood around your body in a way that's consistent with life.
Wow.
So that's why the surface capillaries are dilated. That's why your heart's beating faster. And then as you kind of slide into more metabolic disorders, then you try and correct with rapid breathing.
All caused by these endotoxins?
Yeah, initially caused by the endotoxins, but it's also kind of like a pathologic body response. Okay.
Just kind of snowballs.
So this is kind of like when people, you remember the E. coli thing? And little kids especially, what would happen is they'd eat the toxic E. coli, and it would kind of put endotoxins into your bloodstream, and they would go into organ failure.
Okay.
It's kind of the same thing.
Wow.
It's off the rails in the same way.
Yeah.
But here's the trip. If there's a 65% mortality even with treatment, that means getting somebody cooled down and hydrated
Might not be enough.
isn't enough.
Right.
You got to correct for the metabolic imbalances. You probably got to do something to control the heart rate. Definitely you're packing them ice and giving them cold fluids. But if there's altered mental status too, you probably got to be convincing them to do the right thing.
So is it, wow, is it a matter of there being, I'm just curious about, and I know, I see what you're reading as well, so I know how much information there is here, but I'm wondering if the 65% mortality rate, I mean, how related is that to length of time, spent,
length of time, how hot you got, probably what the heat index is, what you were doing, were you working in the field, or doing construction in Florida, this is going to get worse with the laws that have been recently enacted.
Now, you mentioned that, and I don't know off the top of my head those laws. Which laws are you referring to?
I don't know them either, so I'm wobbly here. But I think it's Florida enacted that that construction workers working in heat couldn't take the usual amount of breaks that they were used to, that they had to keep working even through really hot conditions.
Whoa.
So, it's a problem for farm workers like Central Valley. So it's not just those states over there. It can be a problem anywhere. If people don't get breaks in heated conditions like this, then they start to drop.
I'm looking to see, and it looks like, there were workplace rules governing things like that, like how many breaks you get, things like, and Florida injected itself into that process because they wanted to disrupt that and make sure everybody stays working.
Yeah, they probably thought people were faking or something.
Right. God.
But the other thing too is if climate crisis makes certain places hotter, and you have fewer protections, you're going to have increased mortality, and this is a big deal. This is
What happens, and I'm sorry, I'm interrupted.
Yeah,
Please finish. I don't mean to do that. No.
Okay. No, I mean, more people are going to die from it. So it doesn't surprise me that my reference said the numbers were going up.
What happens in the third world? What happens in India?
I don't know about India, but Mexico, they have siesta, right?
Just culturally going back a long way.
That might be why. Because they're kind of tropical. They have a high heat index, especially the part of Mexico I was in.
Yeah.
So this goes back to the last thing I was going to say. There's a specific demon in Slavic mythology that causes death in people working in the fields at midday.
That sounds wow. Okay.
Right.
That sounds like a lesson.
It's a female demon.
It's a female. Really? Hot flashes. We can make all kinds of jokes.
So they're culturally attuned to having midday breaks for people so that the demon doesn't get you.
Yeah. Well, there in the middle of Europe.
So siesta, I think that might be part of what siesta is, at least how it started.
And like Eastern Europe, Central Europe's pretty muggy, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
I think so.
But you could also call this common sense, right? Why would you work people when it's like that brutal?
Well,
in my opinion.
Well, firsthand. Did you feel brutalized walking around out in did you feel like you were at risk walking the streets?
I wasn't working. It was kind of vacation.
Well, yeah, I know, but it's a place. It is a place in your mind, in your workflow, in your life that does not raise alarms in your brain. Analogously, a farm worker in a Slavic country would be in the same place. They're not in a strange place. They're doing something they do every day. So I'm just, they wouldn't go, I'm putting myself at risk doing the same thing they do, doing what appears to them to be an ordinary activity, just like you.
Unless they have some legal force making them stay there.
Well, there's that, right? Yeah, sure.
Or a boss thing or something like that. But
or they're Slavic in Florida.
I just want to say it did change the way I experienced. So we were there for 10, 11 days, and it changed the way I experienced the rest of the time I was there. So this was like the second day I was there.
Okay.
First full day. And I got a little paranoid about the caretaking of the kids. I mean, I wasn't, I was approaching it from a clinical, logical view, but I didn't participate in any of the like field trips or anything. I always put myself in a central location so people could find me.
Okay.
So I didn't necessarily go, to the Mayan village to talk with the Mayan elders about how to make hammocks or something. I put myself in a really centralized location and made sure everybody knew where I was so that if a kid went down, I was there.
Well, that's why you were there too, right? Yeah.
And then the other thing is at night, their pharmacies are open 24 hours a day. Yay, Mexico. And they've got something they call sueros in Spanish, but it's Pedialyte, essentially.
Right, okay.
Branded Pedialyte tastes way better over there.
Sweatos?
Yeah, it's like Sueros. And it's kind of interesting because
when tamarind flavored or something?
they are really focused on the availability of electrolyte replacement.
Wow.
And I never understood it because when I work with the migrante population here, the grandmas are always going, get me some of this stuff. Will insurance pay for it? And they do, by the way. But they have seen people do badly in the absence of it.
Yeah.
And it's a simple way to solve the problem. And I actually think in heat stroke, there's probably some electrolyte abnormalities that it would address. So I kind of put that, that way of life and concern together. It was part of a puzzle for me that I enjoyed seeing firsthand.
Have you ever dealt with heat stroke medically?
Only peripherally. I've seen it in the ER.
And I'm sorry, I said heat stroke. Heat exhaustion.
Oh, I lived through, heat exhaustion. I lived through it.
Yeah, right,
so,
right.
But that's not super objective. But heat stroke I've seen in the ER peripherally.
Okay.
It's not like I was the go get this, Lynn.
Right,
I was in the medical mind in that.
Wow. So...
but it's super similar now. My understanding of it is super similar to septic shock. If this hypothesis about gut microflora is true, if the intestines do get permeable and they dump endotoxins in there, whoa, mind blown.
There's nothing you can do about that, right? I mean,
well, yeah, you can give vasopressors and fluids and stuff like that, but that when somebody is that sick, they are circling the drain.
Right.
There's a lot of metabolic abnormalities that are have to be considered. It's exquisitely complicated medicine, way beyond me.
Yeah. And see, and again, like so much that we talk about here, it seems to affect so many different systems all at once, and then they snowball together, and it becomes this.
So it makes me more tolerant of the kind of climate refugees that are actually coming to our town during the summer.
Does that make it easier to drive across town knowing what they face?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, even though it's a dry heat?
They're still miserable. They're still miserable, and they are here. And in fact, when I did acute care clinic yesterday, there were a lot of people who are relocating from hotter areas of the state, and that's part of what they said is they can't take the heat anymore.
Right.
And then they're shocked to see what rural medicine really is.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I guess this is a horrible. I was going to say something so stupid. Like, oh, well, maybe this will be with this influx of people, then it'll mean we'll address the problems facing rural medicine. But what that means is that with all this influx of people, we won't be a rural place anymore. So,
right.
And I don't want that to happen.
That's kind of optimistic. I think, yeah.
My gosh. Wow. Okay. So okay, let's say somebody like because I've lived here now in Delaware County 20 plus years and have totally been acclimated. And there was a springtime trip a decade past to Phoenix that just about killed me because I thought, I grew up in the San Joaquin Valley, I can handle, and it wasn't even 100 degrees there, and it was horrible.
80 is horrible. In my world,
anything in Phoenix is horrible. You're right, but anything above 0 Kelvin in Phoenix is.
Yeah, what were you thinking?
But having grown up in the San Joaquin Valley, where 110 degrees for the 4th of July, that was just growing up. That's no big deal,
right?
And and when I was a kid, and I've tried to understand too how things have changed, because when I was a kid, I see these things and people are, it's going to be 105 in Reading, and I'm like, yeah, of course. Why are we we making such a big deal out of it? And I guess now it's because it's going to be 105 for 3 straight weeks is why we're making a big deal.
Or earlier.
Right.
We didn't see it coming or something.
Yeah.
Or fire has something to do with it, and smoke makes us all miserable.
No, don't bring that up yet, please.
Yeah.
I'm going, hey, we're already halfway through July. Maybe we'll make it. Knock on wood. And then, August and September still to get through before that.
Yeah, that's still a problem.
So being somebody, as starting this whole thing, this whole diatribe, I guess, this little passage here, being somebody who's lived here long enough to become totally acclimated to Del Norte, what can I do if I'm going over the hill, if I'm going to Redding, if I'm going to Sacramento? I mean, other than just staying inside as much as possible?
I think acclimatization is going to be a thing. So, like, when people are going, like, I'm going to go to Colorado and climb a 14er.
Yeah, you don't just go do that.
Yeah,
right?
you don't just go do that. So I think we'll have to look at heat as acclimatizing. You know, like I was in Blue Lake during 4th of July weekend, and it was, like upper 80s, low 90s, and I was super miserable. Mm-hmm. And, trying to do everything I could to mitigate that. So I think you have to go somewhere kind of in between, or during a time that's in between, and then take another step. And I don't know that you can shoot to Redding and unless you're heavily supported with like air conditioner.
Right. You'd have to stay inside, stay hydrated, avoid the heat.
You're not going to be able to do what you used to be able to do, especially if you have risk factors. So people with risk factors probably a bigger deal.
Right. But if you're having to go someplace for, say, a week, then maybe try to set up some acclimatation time for yourself. Yeah,
don't zip there and expect to be able to physically do what you want to do.
Yeah. To look at it just the same as you're going above 10,000 feet. You're going to need some time to get used to that.
Right.
Wow. Well, okay. So you mentioned earlier before off mic that you're doing the thing up the road here, the clinic, the walk-up clinic.
Yeah, the homeless clinic.
Is it just homeless clinic? Does it have an official name?
No, occasionally mobile medical.
Mobile medical. Okay.
So it's probably not going to be there very much longer as far as behind the Superette. It's there today, noon to 3, but I think they're going to move it in closer to the showering times. So Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Del Norte Community Health Center.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they need to do that in the parking lot, but they like their bus is cool. Did it drive by? Something caught your attention?
No. So they're not going to do it out here anymore in this part of town?
No.
Where all these homeless people live?
They're not really getting huge numbers of people.
Oh, okay.
So I think they're trying to tie it to a draw, which is the showers, which is... Mission Impossible, which is more food, which is...
It just kind of... Okay.
Because people... Yeah, I know.
You're going to all the money for the bus, and you're going to park it in the parking lot?
Okay, just for part of the time. And they're talking about making it like kind of tied to certain activities in the community. Like, let's say the Gasky River Race would be like a perfect place to park it. And UHS is tying theirs to like things like brush dances and stuff, or cultural events that are kind of rural, because some of those take place up by Wichipec and stuff like that.
Sure. But then that addresses populations not homeless for the most part. So it just seems strange to cut off Elk Valley Road like that.
Right. And I think that could be an ongoing discussion, that they don't really want to abandon it. But I saw 8 people 2 weeks ago, the last time I did it. That was kind of a larger number of people.
Rush. Okay.
And I cut it off at 3 because it sounded like gunfire was going on. Maybe it was firecrackers. I don't know. But there was a police presence, and it was getting a little exciting. So we left a wee bit early.
Okay. So, but I guess if there's no demand, if folks aren't showing up for it, there's no reason to be out there. But
right. Totally. I think they could draw more people if they had more resources that would attract people. So that would be food.
Oh, they not do that anymore?
Not really.
Oh, okay.
They've got a bag of tangerines and some applesauce, but
they
food.
they were cooking food there when I did that piece on it.
And that dropped out really early. That was Mission Possible. And then also some of the medical assistants
right.
independently doing it, and that wasn't sustainable. So they need a food source that's sustainable.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that some of those government food boxes will show up today. I've asked that they show up. But this isn't really... I'm just the peripheral substitute person that can't stop talking about it. So they're like, let's do this.
Right.
And they just look at me. They're like, go see patients.
Yeah. Nice idea.
Yeah.
We'll put it right here on the front of the fridge.
Yeah.
Well, Lynn, thank you very much. And thanks. Very timely, very topical thing. And hopefully we've got some refugees here listening in our neck of the woods, and they can take this home and spread the word how to beat the heat.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's it. I guess any idea about next week?
Yeah, I want to see how Republican platforms that are talked about in the news commonly are going to affect medical care.
That's a good
But
thing
I
to
really
know.
need to be meticulous in my research. So.
Well, good luck reading all that.
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk next week, Lynn. Thanks.
Alrighty. Thanks. Bye.